What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're here with Hai from Ava Commerce, and yeah, I think we've got a pretty interesting episode. But first of all, Hai, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
Yeah. So I think the main thing that we want to talk about today is tariffs and their second half, or like what we expect to happen in the second half of the year. Today's July 3rd as we're filming this, so we just wrapped up half one or the first half of the year, and I'm very interested to hear Hai's take on that. But Hai, before we get into that, because obviously it's an exciting topic, I'd like to give you just like a quick introduction about yourself and maybe a little bit about Ava.
Sure, absolutely. So I live in San Diego and I'm the CEO of EVA. And what I'm doing is as I said, I'm the CEO, which means I'm doing anything and everything about EVA. And EVA is a tech company and an agency. We have a platform which helps automating advertising, profit analytics, inventory management for Amazon, Walmart, Shopify, sellers, marketplaces. And also we have the consulting services that kind of supports the brands to grow profitably on Amazon and the other marketplaces.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And to kind of get us kicked off, I mean, maybe we should talk about what just happened in the first half of the year. I think it would be safe to say that it was a wild ride, but I'd love to hear your kind of impressions now that it's just passed. Like, what do you think about half one? How do you feel people in the Amazon space responded to it? That kind of thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So, Sean, just to give a bit of a more background, I'm a computer engineer myself, meaning that I really always like to talk about data and data-driven strategies. It's like I am the data guy. So, everything started with like February, roughly in February, where the President Trump, started like having this tariff conversations and then suddenly we hit with the China-US trade war in a way that the tariffs were increasing almost every day. So the first reaction of the market now, as you know, when I look at more than 300 customers that we have at the time, I just analyzed pretty much like 300 of them, because one of the things with Amazon, people have stock, people have the inventory, meaning that the first reaction was, hey, let's see what will happen, because every day the things were changing. But at the same time, the customers, they all have 3 to 4 months of stock at least. So that was kind of the first kind of a surprise situation. Now, the second reaction was then more in the like a long-term, short-term view. The long-term view that I've seen talking to customers, they started thinking that probably switching from China, the China manufacturers, if possible, makes more sense in the long term. Now, that's a long-term game. I've seen so many customers started looking at Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, of course, Vietnam, even Europe, Turkey as a different source for manufacturers. So that's a long-term game. And I believe this will happen over the next couple of years. I truly believe that there will be a switch from China to the rest of the world. That's something that will happen. That rest of the world will definitely include US when it makes sense, when it's profitable. But most of the time, especially the things sold on Amazon, e-commerce, I believe they will just go into the third world or the rest of the countries. So that's the long-term game. Now, the short-term is what I'm seeing now is like the tariff still is at a very high rate. Now, think about this, 55% of Amazon sellers are from China. Now, they are the ones that are directly from China. That doesn't kind of include the American Chinese ones, or I'm not trying to say the Chinese Americans, but the American Chinese, meaning that the Chinese sellers who have also established businesses in the US, especially like states like Wyoming. Now, if you include that, it's like 75% of everything comes from China. And as of today, the tariff rates are between 11 to 50% for the world. And I mean, I think it's pretty much like 55% for China, meaning that Obviously, 55% on cost doesn't mean 55% on the sales price, right? So the impact of that to sales is probably 10 to 15%. Now, the short term thinking, back to, I mentioned the long term, which is switch from China. But the short term thinking is how to address that 10 to 15% price increase. Now, there are two options. One, increase the price, and the two is reduce the cost. Now, what I'm seeing is 80% of the sellers, they go for reducing the cost because increasing the price means, well, there's a lot of competition. I'm seeing that a lot of the sellers, brands, they hesitate to increase the price, although they will, and I think they should. But at this moment, it's kind of an opportunity to look at the cost and reduce the cost. Especially, unfortunately, advertising is something that is hit by the cost reduction. That's what I see.
I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I do want to touch a little bit more on the idea of shifting supply chains to other countries. Did you see any companies successfully switch suppliers? Because I have one client who tried to source a similar thing to what they're getting from China in the United States. And that United States manufacturer was so overwhelmed, they actually had a waiting list. Like they were completely full and they had a list of people who they'd be willing to take on later if anybody left. So I saw a lot of people try to ship to different places and not even be able to succeed. So I was wondering if you saw people actually succeed at doing this.
Right. Look, what I'm seeing is, first of all, at least 50% of our customers, they want to like switch to another country or back to US, right, for manufacturing. So that's what I see as a trend. Now, how many of them really made it successful? I think maybe only 10% of the ones that they are thinking about it. But as I said, this is a long term game. And I mean, in this long term game, I think it will take years, like to switch from China to the other countries, because I think that, Vietnam is also in a very good position in this game. By the way, probably half of the Vietnamese sellers are already the same Chinese sellers. I mean, the Chinese are pretty good in finding solutions and they are very creative. And that's one of the things that I see, like huge investment going on Vietnam. But the thing is, Vietnam is also having the same kind of conversations with U.S. related to the tariffs. So we don't know what will happen yet. Now, Mexico, for sure, I've seen a few of our customers due to its close proximity to the US trade agreements. I mean, I think it will be great. I see Colombia coming as another very good, possibility for manufacturing. Obviously, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand is like following the same trend of Vietnam. And some of the computer stuff, as kind of supplies and all the things, India will be definitely important. So I think these are the kind of the countries, and there is a flow going on, and it depends on the products like textile, apparel, India, Bangladesh, Turkey, like electronics, maybe India. But what I'm seeing is, I mean, just to give you some ideas, by the way, now people are thinking, okay, we can take the parts from China, assemble it in Mexico. That's kind of like what I see all the time, which I think, there will be a lot of this creative ways of escaping from the tariffs. Furniture, Indonesia, Malaysia, probably. Consumer goods, why not back to US? So that's good for the US consumer package companies, and probably toys to Indonesia or Thailand or Vietnam. So these are the trends that I see.
One big category you didn't touch on, and if you don't know, that's totally okay, but you hadn't touched on electronics. Do you think, like, because electronics has a pretty complex supply chain, do you think it's possible for that to go somewhere else?
No, actually, what I wanted to say about electronics, like that's what I said about maybe I didn't mention electronics, but that's what I was referring to. That's the toughest one. I see that people are thinking about the creative ways, which is assemble in country X, but still many of the parts are produced in China. Now, the problem is it will take again the other countries or US, maybe, I don't know, like it will take 2 years at least to come to a point where it makes sense besides China to build that parts, because China is like the king of that, right? I mean, the master of that electronics. Now, for example, we have heard that Apple is moving their iPhone assembly to India. But even we don't know exactly whether every single piece will be assembled in India, which probably not. Now, I'm just saying that when it comes to electronics, the production will continue in China, but the assembly will happen somewhere else, which will fix the problem of tariffs, but maybe still at, I don't know, 5% on top, because there is a assembly suboptimal situation, right? It's not the optimum, but it's still better than paying the tariffs versus doing the assembly in a third country.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that really aligns with what I've been seeing. Fun point, actually, I have one client who gets the majority of their goods from Mexico. Even people sourcing from Mexico were not immune to the trade wars. They had to force shipments through the border faster than they were planning on it to try to avoid tariffs, because if they had sent the truck 2 days later, what would have happened is the product would have had a substantial tariff slapped on top of it. Even sourcing much closer to the United States is still quite challenging. It's been very interesting to see and very challenging for the average business to kind of adapt in these quite strange market conditions. I want to pick back up the thread that you were pulling on about adjusting your advertising. What have you seen people doing or companies doing when it comes to adjusting their advertising on Amazon to kind of accommodate these additional tariffs?
No, that's definitely a great question, because, as I said, right now, the short term, kind of solutions are, of course, prioritized because we are in July, meaning that it's only 2 months left to the big last 4 months. The Q4 is coming. So, everybody's like preparing for that, right? So, and as it's only kind of 4 months left, people like all the sellers, they look into the ways of like optimizing their costs, and advertising is one way. Now, I also mentioned increasing the prices. One of the things that eva platform does is eva is dynamically increasing the prices based on the demand. It's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
rule-based algorithm, and there is a blended AI version. I'm an AI guy for also 25 years now, but I can say that, especially when it comes to price increases, instead of AI, I very much recommend that, there's some simple rules, like if the demand is better than last week, why not to increase, and things like that. So there is a
Mm-hmm.
way of like configuring that on eva, and I believe that gradual price increase is the right strategy, rather than immediately increase the price by 10%, 15%. Let it slowly increase with an algorithm, like 0.5%, 1%, 2% every day. Especially for one-time sale product, like it makes sense. For repeat products, we think a little bit differently, because the customer might be a little bit upset, when the prices are changing very frequently. But other than that, price increase, I think, should definitely happen. Now, on the advertising side, it's not only about advertising. There might be other ways of reducing the cost, like firing people and things like that. But advertising is the biggest thing, right? Because, I mean, there is so much to do with advertising, but CPC costs are high. And I mean, I think that there are different strategies right now that the people are looking into, how to reduce the ACOS or TACOS more. I mean, we can talk about some of them, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen that. I've actually seen companies that are sourcing their products from China. Like we've seen them hitting record months right now. And I think some of it just comes down to the fact that even though these tariffs have been really challenging for business, there's still been a lot of opportunity. People still need to buy things. People still want the same things they wanted before. And one of the things we found is people are now more than ever interested in getting a good deal on products they buy, especially on Amazon. So one of the main things we found is like actually strategically optimizing your Amazon or yeah, your ad spend can have a bigger impact than a price raise. But we also don't currently use AI based algorithms for price testing, which is quite interesting. I would love to hear some of the strategies, or maybe we can brainstorm together some of the strategies you've seen to work for you know improving ACOS, tacos, that kind of thing. But some of the stuff I've been seeing is a lot of single keyword campaigns, a lot of very creative budget optimizations, leveraging Amazon Marketing Cloud to get higher conversion rates. Those are some of the things I've been seeing. Have you been seeing similar things, different things?
Right. First of all, I mean, back to the first thing that you mentioned, which is, like, yes, the tariffs are, kind of increased. Maybe the prices are increased to some extent, but the US consumer spending didn't decrease too much. It's kind of the same. Maybe there's like a 0.1%. It fell compared to like June to May, like May to June. That's kind of like what I see. I mean, what I'm basically, I'm just telling you the data, not that I so. So the demand is still there. Now, I am not sure. 6 months later, things can be different. Year on year, maybe Q4 can be different, but most likely it won't be. So the demand is there. Now,
Mhm.
the prices are increasing slightly. As you know, the inflation is a little bit more than it's expected. But, which means that the Amazon sellers are absorbing most of these costs increases because the price increase is not at the level of the tariff increase. Now, definitely the price algorithm that I mentioned, kind of a very simple, by the way, there is an AI version of it with Eva. But instead, we use a very simple version, a very simple feature. I love it. A lot of sophisticated $100 million customers even use that, which is if like if it, let's say, X units are sold this week, increase the price by Y%. I mean, it's kind of like that type of a very easy algorithm that as a seller, as an agency, you can just make this work. Like, and it's up to you, right? To define X, to define the Y. You can also compare it with last week. By doing it, it's very simple. Now, one of the things about I'm dealing with this pricing management for the last almost 5 years. I have seen so many like, now this AI driven price optimization, like there's like a couple of software companies. I think pretty much all of them are rubbish. Like, I don't think that makes any sense to me. If you know exactly based on the velocity or based on the ranking or based on the advertising KPIs, you want to update your price, and it can be a very simple rule. So, I mean, for the ones that are not using Eva, I definitely recommend to, go for a 30 days free trial and try that. Now, that's one side of the story. Now, on the other side, advertising. One of the things that I'm seeing, Sean, and hard to measure, but there is a lot of cannibalization going on from time to time between organic and advertising. Now, it's hard to measure. It's not to the best interest of Amazon. Like, I mean, I sometimes think Amazon says, hey, you have only 7% cannibalization on this or something like that. Because, like in some cases, like the organic is not in some cases. Now, my thinking is with a 99.9% of the time, there is a add to organic cannibalization and there is no way to avoid it, but you can reduce it. Like you can reduce the level of cannibalization. So I think that might be a better way to look into the advertising game. Is there a way to avoid the cannibalization? We have seen a lot with DSP or audience-based marketing, for example, like sometimes that the using the DSP, great results, ROAS 10. Well, if you stop DSP, and we have seen that a few times, I don't know, the sales dropped by 2%. Like, what happened to all the DSP stuff? Well, it was already organic. And I have done that. Unfortunately, yeah, I've done that test like 10 times. Each time, the cannibalization with DSP was really huge. Audience-based marketing was huge. So something to look into. There are different things, like hard to get any data from Amazon related to that. So the only way to know is sometimes even you need to stop some of the campaigns and see the performance and take it to the next step. One of the things that we implemented with Eva, not coming from APIs, but we found a very smart way of getting which order is a new order and which order or which customer is a new customer. Now, why this is interesting? Because this data to, at the high level, exist on AMC. Now, not everybody is dealing with AMC, Amazon Marketing,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it's not about that. You want to know exactly for a set of orders which ones are new and which ones are not. Now we are
Mhm.
able to differentiate that with Eva. The way that we are using that data is relative, like we are using the relativity here, meaning that
Mhm.
the data itself is not extremely helpful. But if we do a campaign and it increases the repeat orders versus new orders, then we kind of think that there is cannibalization on what we do. So that's kind of like one way of like looking into this, like, but the day that's a very complex thing, but something to look into. There are some other things too. I don't know, like you tell me what else you are looking
Yeah.
into with ads.
So we have found that strategically leveraging deals and reducing ad spend, especially during a deal, and then kind of keeping that ad spend the same, but using deals all 12 months of the year has been really effective at increasing your organic sales percentage without increasing your ad spend as much. And the thinking that we found is we think that Amazon's algorithm, like its ranking algorithm, gives more credence to an organic sale than it gives a advertising sale. So we don't know how much and we don't know what the percentage might be, but we do know that on days where we run a lightning deal or a 7-day deal, we get a higher percentage of organic sales than we would on days where we don't. So if we run the exact same amount of ad spend across any number of days, but then run deals on other days as well, we found we get a really big pop in organic ranking without a big increase in ad spend. And so one of the things we've realized is if you run a deal and you grow your rankings, those gains can stay, provided that your product is good enough to stay at the top afterwards. So like running an insane deal is not going to get you to the top of the page, but running a deal that is just a good deal that kind of matches the fact that you already have a product that's really good and deserves to be at the top of the page. Using those two things together has been a great way to kind of increase sales without increasing ad spend so aggressively. Like the equivalent amount of PPC spend that you gave away from like the deal price wouldn't have the same impact. You know what I mean? Like the 15% off applied to every unit that you sold. If you turn that into ad spend instead, it just wouldn't have the same impact that actually just running a deal does have. And so that's something we've found is kind of using any kind of promotions has been quite powerful when it comes to increasing the amount of organic sales you get, or put another way, decreasing the amount of cannibaliz- uh, cannibalization that there is. Uh,
Right.
so that's been really interesting for us, and I hope that that makes sense. The next thing I wanted to ask you about is so I was looking at Eva online before, and I apologize for mispronouncing it earlier. And one thing I noticed is you also help with inventory management and inventory optimization. And given that we've been talking about tariffs and all that kind of stuff and its impact on the back half of the year, did you see people make any adjustments to the way they manage their inventory? Did people try to ship in more stuff before the tariffs? Did they hold everything in China? Or like what did you see when it came to seller behavior?
Well, first of all, I think it was mostly March and April, just before that 140% tariff was announced. I
Hmm.
mean, I think it was unbelievable. I mean, everybody ordered as much as they can. I can tell you that a lot of our customers during the April, May period, like they already ordered like whatever they need until end of Q4. So
Mm.
that's why I mean like the exports, the Chinese exports to US kind of skyrocketed until that day when it's kind of announced.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons why still the price impact is not there, because a lot of this was like already imported before the tariff was increased. Now, that's one side of the story. Now, in terms of like inventory management, like we have an algorithm. I wouldn't call it AI, but it's more an optimization algorithm, which ensures based on the velocity, demand, and all the other parameters over the last 12 months, I mean, how many units need to be replenished. Now, the way that we do it is EPL component as well. Like we have a EVA 3PL, which means we have two warehouses, one in California, the other one in Houston, depending on where the exports are coming from. So what we do is like first we always say definitely import at least 6 months of inventory. Then we deliver a kind of a plan, a projection, what can be sold over the last 6 months based on the EVA platform and our inventory experts. Now, most likely, it's not only about ensuring you have the inventory, but also you want to avoid all types of unnecessary Amazon costs because Amazon has now so many storage fees that you need to have a master's degree to understand when do they charge what. There is inventory fee, there is low inventory fee, high inventory, splitted inventory, that inventory. I mean, these things even were not existing like I think 2 years ago. Now it's like long-term storage fee. I mean, you say high and now you said high and now you need to pay some fee. Like there's a lot of fees, right? I think it's around 65 fees we calculate on the EVA platform. So what we do is like as a strategy, doesn't need to be EVA 3PL, but first import as much as possible and then put it into our 3PL and then gradually we send it to Amazon to avoid the costs. And, like that really helps as well. So now our 3PLs are pretty much full too. And that's also a good, kind of a, best practice, I have to say.
Wow. So I didn't realize you guys had a 3PL as well. How are you finding replenishment cycles? Because one of the things my clients have been complaining about is like you can't get product into AWD, you can't get product into Amazon itself. Like you have to send shipments all over the place. It costs $1 billion. Like it sounds like Amazon took all the rules and decided to shuffle them all. But are you guys finding that as a 3PL provider, or are you finding that is not so much the case?
Well, it is absolutely the case right now. That's why, I mean, it's so complicated
Mhm.
compared to before. Now, of course, Amazon claims that they have the AWD and all that stuff. But here is the problem, right? Like this, when you are working with a 3PL,
Mhm.
and I have nothing to say bad about Amazon, but the basic thing is the sellers or the brands, their whatever responsible person wants to talk to someone, right? Like who is like physically touching their products in a warehouse, which is
Mhm.
impossible with Amazon. Because I mean, I'm sure everybody loves Amazon support, but it will be very unlikely to know exactly what happened to your products. Now,
Yeah.
because people really want to make sure that, hey, like my products are sitting in a warehouse that is safe and that's in the right place. And when I ask that will be sent over. Now we see a lot of that. And then there is all this split costs and shipments to different warehouses from AWD or from 3PL. So basically, because we know all that stuff, like we optimize it, and that optimizations even easily save 10, 15%, even sometimes a lot more, depending on the size of the products and everything. Now, on top of it, having a 3PL gives you the FBM strategy. Not always
Mhm.
the best thing, of course, it's FBA game. But most of the time, even if you have the best FBA product, an FBM strategy avoids like out of the stock situation. And, like you can send the products from FBM, but then you need that again, the same like a 3PL provider who is able to ship the products with a very low rate, like we do around, I don't know, $600 million of shipments. um, FedEx, USPS, and UPS rates that we have is much better than any other seller brand in the market. So that helps. And it also helps with like doing an omni-channel strategy with Shopify and Walmart too. And then obviously inventory management is not only about knowing, like, for example, for the next 6 months, how much you're going to sell on Amazon and how many units you're gonna ship to Amazon FBA, but also what about Walmart FBA, FBW, and also what about like Shopify and direct to consumer fulfillment
Mhm.
if there is no retail fulfillment within. So there's a lot to look at when it's about inventory management.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like this can go infinitely more and more and more. Like we can think about one thing, but then how does that affect this thing? But then how does that affect this thing? And I think the fact that you're trying to save your customers money and you're able to save them money on something that they would have incurred as just a regular cost otherwise is quite intelligent. So cheers to you for that. That's super cool. I want to talk a little bit about the future. Like looking forward, what do you think's going to happen in the back half of the year? Notoriously, like it's the beginning of summer, or yeah, summer began on the 20th of June, technically. So, what do you think about the months ahead before Q4 and including Q4? What are you kind of thinking is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is I think the Prime Day is coming. So we're going to see how this Prime Day will perform compared to the previous year, the previous time Prime Day. So I'm thinking that will be a strong Prime Day. That's kind of my expectation. It will be even better than last time. And I don't really believe that there will be any significant reduction on the US consumer spend, meaning that people want to buy. I mean, that will continue. Again, the only challenge is like there will be less profits. So the companies who are able to optimize their expenses definitely, there will be less profits, or there will be, the ones which are able to optimize more, they can increase their market share. So this might be a great opportunity for some of the brands to increase their market shares as well. It all depends on their operational efficiency. And most of it will be about like to balance the organics, growth and the ad growth, and working with best technologies, best experts to make sure that the advertising is optimized. I think, that will be extremely important. I mean, I see that like, direct to consumer Shopify trends are also increasing. Like a lot of Amazon sellers are still trying to diversify. Walmart is getting better and better, but Amazon is still the king. I don't expect any changes on that.
Yeah. I agree. I think it is important to diversify. We haven't even touched on TikTok Shop, but I think that's another thing that will probably although I do have one client who said dealing with fulfillment by TikTok, FBT, has been an absolute nightmare. So just be aware of that. I think it might be better to self-fulfill when you're selling on TikTok Shop from the one experience I've heard. But then again, that could just be a rarity. So when it comes to kind of like parting messages, do you have anything you want to share with the audience? Like anything that maybe that hasn't been said yet, or we've almost said but kind of missed?
Well, I mean, maybe one of the things that we should touch, although it's a buzzword, and I am dealing with that for the last almost 25 years now, is AI. Now, 25 years ago, that was more like a sci-fi thing, but I was like in a lab, like coding AI and waiting 24 hours to get a result out of
Hmm. Okay.
because the processing power, the cloud technology, that was not there. But the algorithms were there, like the algorithms were already there, but not the power was not there. Now, AI is a reality. I mean, I think, I don't know about you, but 75% of my search today is through ChatGPT or Perplexity. I know that overall search of AI is now 0.7% compared to Google. But I mean, you're gonna see next year, same time, probably it will be skyrocketing, exponentially growing to 5% from 0.7. So things are changing with AI search, AI telling us what to do. My recommendation to all Amazon brands is also like how to leverage the tech. I'm not saying just it's AI, but I think in general, without tech and without data driven technologies, it will be hard to compete. Maybe in 10 years, the robots will buy for us.
Yeah.
So then we don't need to have a chat, like we don't need to have even the podcast, like two robots can have it, right?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know. The world is changing very fast. That's what I can
Mhm.
say. But I ask myself every day, what else I can do with AI?
Yeah. No, that's a really fair take. I'm also a big proponent of AI. One of the big things that we've been using AI for here is, I mean, I actually vibe coded a set of dashboards for our agency, and I've never learned to write software. I've definitely been more of like a traditional sales and marketing person, but when I look at AI, it just makes so many things that I thought were out of reach for me before something that could be a possibility, you know? I can make my own dashboards now. I can run deeper analysis. I've made at least we have three different custom GPTs on our website where we just talk about different things you can use AI for. And so when I think about AI, I agree. For me, it's not so much about the technology as it is giving me access to things I couldn't do before or giving me access to things that I can do in a fraction of the time. So I don't see AI as like a search as much as I see AI as an opportunity to improve things I'm already good at. So that's really the way I've been thinking about it. But yeah. So, hi, where can people find you? Where should they go?
Well, as you said, the company is eva.guru. EVA.GURU is the best way to reach out, and they can easily connect their store, test the EVA tech, or ask for a free consultation. And my name and last name is pretty simple, HAI.MAG@EVA.guru if anybody wants to email me and ask me more about AI or Amazon or anything.
Well, thanks again. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, Sean.